Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Today we're going to do the map update and then we're going to talk about everything else. And I want to start by looking at the map, but not this map right here, but actually at this map right here. And this is a map by Defmont3, an analyst that is available on Twitter, and you should follow him. He's quite good. And he basically took the numbers and breakdown of Russian forces on the front lines on the 1st of March that we learn about in the leaked documents. Now, the discussion about if these numbers are true, if the leaked documents are true or not true, is still valid. And you should watch my previous video somewhere up there that describes whether or not these documents are true or not. It's still an ongoing discussion. But if you would take them for granted, what will the distribution then be? So on the 1st of March, he explained that there would be 139,500 troops that are located on the front lines, of which he would say there is 48,600 on the Kharkiv front line. It is here in the north, the orange one. Then on the Bakhmut front line, it would be about 29,000. And in Donetsk, Zaporizhia, it would be 23,000. And then in Zaporizhia south, like Kherson south, beyond the river of Kherson, it would be only 15,600. Now, obviously, around Kherson, that's the least populated area because there is a river flowing there, so there is nothing else to see. The important part on this map that I want to draw your attention to is this fourth line here that describes soldiers per kilometer. And as if you can see, around both Bakhmut and Kharkiv, the soldiers per kilometer is 251 for Kharkiv and 271 for Bakhmut. Obviously, compared to Zaporizhia with 107 and Donetsk with 127, that's a big difference, isn't it? So what does this tell us? And I will actually explain to you. For a longer time, we were talking about that. I've explained to you that Russia has been sending reinforcements to Kremina and the Kremina direction. While the front line that Defmon describes is like all along the front line, so there's soldiers per kilometer on the front line, I can tell you that they are not nicely spread or across that front line. They are concentrated here. So what this distribution, if we take the numbers in the documents for granted, tells us is that there is a huge grouping, like a massive grouping of forces around the Kremina area. But despite me telling you that, we also know that while they're trying to pierce through, they are not really succeeding it because Ukrainians are holding this. And some analysts are explaining this by saying they are just waiting for the right moment to come. Basically, what they're explaining is, and I know people are a little bit pissed that I'm saying basically all the time. I will work on it, I'll promise. But what people are talking about, when the analysts that are talking about, they are explaining, saying that Bakhmut is a big thorn in their side. So when Bakhmut is taken, this will allow essentially to close this pocket for Russians, straighten out the front line, release the troops that are right now situated in Bakhmut, and then rotate them towards the north, and then start attacking towards the Seversk north direction. And then this second huge grouping around Kremina will then be engaged to then move downwards. I see also problems with this logic because while they are saying that these are the troops that are located on Kremina and they're located on their direction, these are also the forces that are engaged. They're rotating each other, but they're still engaged on the fighting. What I am a little bit kind of hesitant with this plan that was described is that around Bakhmut, Russians have suffered significant casualties, and B, they don't really have that much reserves. Now, there's a lot of troops on the front line, yes, but we know by this point, I hope we learned that without reserves rotating, then if initial push doesn't succeed, then this can easily be just a big stalemate with little to no advancements and a lot of vehicles being destroyed. But to be short, what this whole was talking about is that we need to look at Kremlin direction in case if Bakhmut falls. And talking about Bakhmut, let's actually talk about Bakhmut because situation developed quite rapidly. I talked about last week that Russia was executing a pincer move from the north and from the south, following the river, and we basically saw the moment kind of at which Ukrainian troops already felt uncomfortable locating in between those two forces. Since then, Ukrainian troops have been withdrawing from the center city of Bakhmut, and by this point, I feel kind of that it's gonna would be a little bit dishonest saying that city center is still being fought for by Ukrainian forces. There is some of the small area right here at the south, but with the same understanding that this is just a very small part of the city center itself. So in a week, essentially, the city center of Bakhmut has been taken by Russians. Right now, Ukrainians have established defensive positions, and I'm going to use blue for Ukrainians. And Ukrainians have established defensive positions across the railways, and across these railways, what we know is that Russians are trying to attack here in the north. There's also been reports that they try to advance to the south, and generally they're trying to advance over the railways. But railways have always, in this conflict, have been used as a defensive barrier against the enemy. And so far, any kind of progress that Russians made past the railways towards the city center, from the city center, has been stopped. But it does, they do express that fighting in Bakhmut is extremely hard. Some people said that Ukraine is just pulling out, period, and no one is fighting, and that is not true at all. The fighting is still quite intense. With that said, while technically Bakhmut is still controlled, Russia has not taken full control of Bakhmut in a sense that it can release a lot of forces yet, because Ukrainians are still posing a threat. But generally, we're getting close to the situation where Bakhmut, at least the main part, will stop playing its piece. The question is going to be only one: whether or not this will happen before or after Ukraine counterattacks. So far, the tempo has been fast, but we also seen the tempo being falling out. So we'll see. In any case, I want to dismiss a lot of the criticism that some people were explaining. It's the same people that were saying that Ukrainians are just pulling out of Bakhmut. But Bakhmut has been doing its job for over like good 8 to 9 months. So saying that, oh, Ukraine just gave up Bakhmut and left it is not just dishonest, it's untrue. Bakhmut has been doing its job for the defenders. Defenders were defending efficient positions for as long, because war is not like fair. There is not like equal sides and then the one who is wittiest wins. In this war, who has more shit wins. Let's put it this way. And when there is an overwhelming force that is crushing on the defensive positions, the defenders at some point will have to retreat. And we've seen the concentration of forces in Bakhmut is quite astonishing. Basically, on this direction, let me just switch you. On this small direction, small part of the city, we see that it's 29,000 troops located. It's more than the whole Zaporizhia region. It's more than the whole Kherson region. Just on this city alone. So even if we, like, let's take those documents as an example. So telling that Bakhmut is just being abandoned is just not true, period. There was the big threat, and there was a New York Times article saying that there was a huge threat that Bakhmut gets encircled, but it didn't. Ukrainians held, and since then it was just defensive fighting, basically by the book. So there is no issue that I can see. Was it hard? Yes. Was it questionable? Yes. Was it a lot of casualties? with Ukrainian side? Yes. But the number of afflicted casualties, the number of time that Bakhmut won, that is massive. And we'll see how it's going to get pay off. From there, we get kind of good news from area of Avdiivka. We hear that the counterattack around the south towards Spartak was very successful. So Ukrainians were actually able to get some positions and feel a little bit more comfortable. We also know that Ukrainians were acting very nicely to stop any kind of advancements right now towards Kamenka. This is really good news. So overall, Ukrainians in Avdiivka is holding, they're preventing any kind of continuous advancement by the Russians, and overall, Avdiivka is fine. The same for Marinka. We've heard recently, last time I told you that Ukrainians were counterattacking in Marinka and was able to get some ground. Right now, we're back basically to almost 50-50 separation of this. I cannot call it a village because it's just there is nothing there that says that it's a village. It's all just ruins, and it's a field of stone, like a desert of bricks. So it's in that desert of bricks, it is separated about 50-50 by Ukrainians and Russians. Russia tried to do some of the flanking maneuvers. They tried to do some additional attacks towards flanks. Here they tried to also do attacks towards Nevelske, but it all didn't succeed, and Ukrainian heroes were holding quite extensively back. Now we see some kind of Ukrainian strikes happening on the south side. I think that these might be still probing strikes because this does not look yet like a campaign for the proper preparation for the counteroffensive. Right now, it's more of like an individual, well, not completely individual, but it's not yet to the scale massive that it's overwhelming. Because an overwhelming attack would mean that offensive will probably be imminent in a coming day or two. So right now we're still not there. There's artillery preparations hitting some of the targets, softening up this front line. But overall, it's going to be interesting to see how it develops because everyone knows what's going to happen. Now, obviously, there is still chance that Ukrainians will surprise us and then attack towards the north part, but I think more or less everyone kind of agreed that the south part is the go-to. Now, if you believe those leaked documents, then the attack should be coming somewhere in May, and this is exactly what I was telling you, though I believe it's going to be at middle to the end of May and more towards the June, because just today we've heard that Denmark is going to be delivering quite soon another, I believe it's 100 Leopard 1 tanks, and additionally deliver some of the Caesars, actually all of the 19th Caesars that they bought from France. I thought I will have more time to talk today, but I guess it will go to the next video. But today I want to talk about the number of casualties because some people, they watched my last video, which you should watch as well, about the leaked documents, and we were discussing the casualties, the Russian casualties and Ukrainian casualties. And some people really missed the part where I was saying that the casualties on these documents are clearly tampered with. And they were still quoting these documents saying that Ukraine had over 70,000 dead, whereas Russia has 10 or like 17 or something like thousands dead, which is not what is, for example, written on my casualties list. On my casualty list, and I'm going to underscore it again, it said that Ukraine has about 16.5 to 17,500 dead soldiers, whereas Russia has about 38.5 or 36.5 to 45,500 casualties. And this is important to mention in a discussion format. It is kind of low number because while yes, 40,000 dead Russians would mean that it's a 120,000 total casualties when we include wounded, but overall there are neutral observers, like there are a couple of open source intelligence analysts that are very conservative in their estimates. Not that they think that they count like some of the journalists that say like, oh, we're only counting like the dead Russians that we find the actual names for, because obviously like half-blown Ivans are not going to be named anywhere because they are supposedly looking for Moskva and trying to find where it went. The same way as like there are still some sailors on Moskva that apparently are counted as missing. I wonder where did they went. But the point that I'm getting is that the casualties that Russia is suffering in dead are definitely more than whatever they are reporting even to local cemeteries and so on. What these open source conservative analysts have been saying is that Russia have suffered 40,000 dead Russians, which is very close to, well, it's like it was about 38, 39 to 42 or something that they were saying. And they say flows really well. They say, however, it seems that on these documents, the number of casualties, dead Russians, is only for the Russian military proper. And it does not include the dead for paramilitaries, such as Wagner's. Well, I'm not sure if you can call them paramilitaries. So these private military groups, it does not include the Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republic forces, so and any kind of allied forces. So what that means that actually the number of dead Russians might only refer to the casualties in Russian military. And this is important because this would bring number of dead a lot more closer to the Ukrainian estimates than the ones that are right now presented on this chart. In any case, this is a food for thought. Remember, there is still a huge fog of war. We're trying to do our best. We're trying to find as much material. But as I said, a lot of these conservative analysts are saying that these numbers are way too low if we include the Wagners, the prisoners, the LPR, DPR that were just sent in forward as a cannon fodder during the war. I love you all, guys. Thank you so much for all of the supporters of this channel. It is amazing to be here with you. Slava Ukraini, and I'll see you guys next time.